1380 WNRI, Woonsocket.
We got the hotline to the right time.
It's 4 o'clock. WNRI, Woonsocket.
The views expressed on the following program of those of its hosts and participants in no way reflect those of the staff or management of WNRI.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is only the beginning.
Well, hello and welcome to Firing Line 1380. Jeff Gamache here, tucked comfortably in between the John Dion program and Larry Poitra's Primetime Talk. You know the show, the one where Larry takes your calls and conversation up until 6 p.m. tonight. There is a city council meeting this evening. It will be on WNRI starting at 7 o'clock this evening. So we got plenty of programming coming your way. As always, don't touch your radio dial. Leave it right where it is. And we do have a guest in studio today. The following program has been paid for by Robert Marquis, an independent Ron Paul supporter. So we're going to be talking the national election, and Robert Marquis is also a candidate for a delegate on the upcoming April 24th ballot. So let's bring him in and say hello, Robert.
How you doing today, Jeff?
Good. Thanks for choosing Firing Line to bring your message to.
Thanks for having me.
We got two things to talk about. We have the presidential Ron Paul race, and we also have the delegate race, which you are on the ballot in the upcoming election. Let's start off before we dive into Ron Paul as a topic, explaining what people are going to see and how it works when they go in to vote April 24th, particularly when it comes to the delegates.
All right, well, when they go in and they receive their ballot, obviously we're going to be talking about Ron Paul and the Republican GOP, so that's only going to pertain to that. But they will see they have their choice for candidates. There will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 potential choices for you to choose as presidential candidate. And then alongside that, there will be blocks of names with the candidate that's running for president above it. For example, it'll say delegates for Paul, and then beneath that, they will have a listing of all potential delegates that are running for that position, and you can choose for 8 delegates, and it doesn't matter who you vote for in the presidential primary. So now if for some reason you wanted to vote for somebody other than Ron Paul, which I would hope you would not choose to do that, but if you did, you could still vote for me as a delegate nonetheless.
Okay. So when you look at it, the delegates are kind of broken up into categories of Ron Paul, Santorum, obviously, even though he's out, will be on the ballot, and the other candidates as well. So if you can vote for any delegate you choose. You have up to 8. It doesn't matter which block they're in. So the voters understand that. And this is on the Republican ballot, so really we're talking to the independent voters who can declare that day that they would like to vote in the Republican primary, correct?
That's correct, yep, April 24th.
And we know there's a good chunk of independent voters out there. Just because you're an independent, don't think you're sitting home on primary day with nothing to do. Come on down to the polls. You can declare to pick up a Republican ballot and vote in this primary for the Republican preferential.
Yeah, I think that's what they're calling it.
I think that's what they're calling it.
The presidential preferential poll.
Yeah. So you can vote on the Republican ticket for your choice for president and, of course, any 8 delegates. This is your first time going out as a delegate?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I was really not even very knowledgeable about the delegate process prior to this go-around for me.
I think a lot of us are not. Basically, if you're elected delegate, you'll go to the convention. Is that correct?
Yeah, that'll allow me to go and participate in the Republican National Convention down in Tampa. It's going to be based on how many votes Ron Paul gets. If he gets 15% or more of the vote within the state, then he will receive a appropriate number of delegates, and then the top vote getters that are running as delegates will be the people assigned to him to represent Rhode Island, Ron Paul, at the National Convention.
All right. So don't forget, April 24th, primary day. Get out there and cast your vote. And when you are an independent voter, don't be afraid about going in on primary day and declaring for a Republican ballot. That doesn't mean you're a registered Republican for the rest of your life.
That's right. After they cast that ballot, if they vote in the Republican primary and they want to continue to be labeled or associated with an independent, they can ask for a disaffiliation paper after they cast their vote, file that, and then they'll go back as being independent or unaffiliated or just not being registered as a Republican.
Yep. All right. You are running as a delegate in the Ron Paul block, but again, remember, you can choose any delegates you wish. Robert Marquis is asking for your vote for delegate, but he's also asking for your support for Ron Paul. Robert, what is it that drew you, of all the candidates, to Ron Paul?
I'd just like to make one more mention about the ballot. The ballot that I'm discussing right now is for District 1, Congressional District 1.
Mm-hmm.
There's a separate ballot for Congressional District 2. Now, the delegates in District 2 are different than the delegates in District 1. So the people who live in District 2 won't have the opportunity to vote for me, but there will be, I believe, at least 8 other Ron Paul delegates there under his name in District 2 as well.
All right, so just to clarify that point, we are talking Congressional District 1, which would be most of the voters in our region. Let's get back to the question. What drew you to Ron Paul?
Well, originally what drew me to Ron Paul was, I would say, probably around before the 08 election, probably around 2007. I don't even remember who provided me with the information, but I started hearing this gentleman discuss monetary policy, particularly regarding the Federal Reserve. Now, prior to hearing Ron Paul discuss it, that's almost a taboo topic that you would never hear your general politicians discussing. They avoid that topic like the plague. In my opinion, I believe they do. So when I heard Ron Paul openly discussing this topic and really calling out the Federal Reserve and making the connections with the income tax, I said, wow, who is this guy? I need to learn more about this gentleman. And then at that point, I started doing a little more homework about him, and I didn't even realize that he had already been in Congress for 8 or 9 terms prior to that, and I had never heard the gentleman's name before. So I was really interested in doing my homework when I found that he was discussing topics that I found very interesting and important to our country when a lot of the other people don't even bring them up.
And you're going to actually hear from Ron Paul himself in a few minutes. We have some excerpts of Ron speaking on various topics. We're on first-name basis, Ron and I.
Well, that's good. Maybe you can introduce me to him. You know, he is coming on Wednesday to Rhode Island at URI, so maybe if you have a personal connection with him, you can hook me up and meet him after the event.
Yeah, well, Ron, I call him. You are attending Wednesday's appearance by Ron Paul in the state.
I am.
But just to put a point of reference out there, that you haven't just thrown support behind Ron Paul willy-nilly. I know just as recently as last week, you took the time to go out and hear opposition speak, his opponent speak. So you've done the research in the other candidates as well.
I did. I was fortunate enough to get an invitation to attend the Romney event over at the Crown Plaza in Warwick. I brought my children with me so that they could take part and experience the event as well. And no, obviously, me being a Ron Paul supporter, I follow the debates and the issues that they discuss. And when I went to the event, I wasn't impressed with the event, but, you know, it was pretty much what I expected. He does a lot of talking, but doesn't say too much, in my opinion.
Well, he certainly is a different breed. So you have Ron Paul, very outspoken about his beliefs and about subjects like oath to office. And we have a couple of audio pieces we're going to bring into the program, which are very interesting. And Ron Paul ad that you hear running on the station, paid for by Robert Marquis, talks about a few things, hitting a reset button on this country. Talks about politics as usual in this country. And it's kind of going to segue into what we're going to hear now, which is a piece of audio about politics as usual, I guess, in this country. Politics as what they call a team sport.
Yeah, party politics. I think a lot of people are really frustrated with, oh, the Democrats did this, the Republicans did this, and they always blame each other, and they never take responsibility. And this whole party agenda thing is I believe, a real hurdle for us to overcome as a country to be able to address the issues that we need to address. And I think Ron Paul draws people in because he is not a party politic type of person.
And, what we're talking about more specifically is the get along to go along mentality of, somebody voted for this, even though their personal convictions tell them not to vote for this because they need to satisfy members of the party. And we see where that's getting us as a nation. But let's listen into this, because this is a real interesting audio clip. And this, Robert, came from the Arizona GOP debate.
That's right.
So let's set it up what the audience is going to hear, because the first voice you're going to hear is actually one of his opponents that recently dropped out, Rick Santorum.
Yeah, they were questioning Santorum about No Child Left Behind, and they said, if you don't really support that type of legislation, why would you vote for it?
And, just look around the community of Woonsocket, and you can see the impact No Child Left Behind has had. Not on the graduation rates, not on the test scores, but on the finances of the school department, where what you've been complaining about, and we've heard this term in the community, and you can see how a national policy trickles down to a problem right here in the city of Woonsocket of unfunded mandates that come right from the top. And these unfunded mandates are often, if you discuss it with folks, well, no child left behind. Well, no child left behind. And this is going to get into it. Here is Rick Santorum's first reply answering why he voted for that bill if he didn't support it.
I have to admit, I voted for that. It was against the principles I believed in, but when you're part of the team, sometimes you take one for the team, for the leader, and I made a mistake. Politics is a team sport, folks.
Hey, politics is a team sport. What are you going to do? Here is, following Santorum's statement, is Ron Paul.
But, and he calls this a team sport. He has to go along to get along, and that's the way the team plays. But that's what the problem is with Washington. That's what's been going on for so long. So I don't accept that form of government. I understand it. That is the way it works. You were with the majority, you were the whip, and you organized and got these votes all passed. But I think the obligation of all of us should be the oath of office. We should take it. It shouldn't be the oath to the party. I'm sorry about that. But it isn't the oath to the party. It's the oath to our office to obey the law, and the law is the Constitution.
Well, it's interesting to hear his take on listening to an opponent say, well, you got to go along together. It's a team sport. What are you going to do? It reminds people about the oath of office rather than the oath of...
Exactly. How many people in politics do you ever hear make mention of something of that nature?
Yeah.
The importance of the oath of office versus the importance of politicking and business as usual, party politics, go along to get along. That's the type of thing that's keeping us and preventing us from overcoming these challenges that we need to face.
The next piece, I think, it almost is maybe around the vein, but it was from the Neil Cavuto show.
Yes.
And Ron Paul was asked about supporting the GOP nominee.
That's right. When they interview him, a lot of times they like to ask him if he's going to throw his support behind the inevitable nominee, whoever that may be. Now, we know they've been trying to coronate a specific candidate all the way back since Ohio and New Hampshire. But, they always ask, are you going to support the candidate and support the party?
And this was his reply.
I guess I can be accused of less loyalty to political parties than others. I think political parties are vehicles, and what you believe in and your oath of office and what the principles are of the Constitution and Bill of Rights, that has a higher priority for me. So I put loyalty, to the party down. In Washington, when there's a tight vote and and the whip comes around, they want you to change the vote. The ultimate test is, are you or aren't you going to be a team player? It has nothing to do with what you believe in or what your oath of office says, but the question is, will you be a team player? So I've never enjoyed that type of conversation. One time Ronald Reagan asked me to change my vote, and I explained to him I had promised in the campaign to vote a certain way, and I'm sorry, but I wouldn't be able to do it. He was very, very respectful and understood it and didn't try to, intimidate me in any way. So I think that's the way it should be, but unfortunately, the loyalty to the party should be secondary to loyalty to your oath of office.
That was the voice of Ron Paul, candidate in the upcoming primary, presidential primary. Remember, April 24th is voting day in Rhode Island. And with us in studio is Robert Marquis. This program has been paid for by Robert Marquis as an independent Ron Paul supporter, also running as a delegate on the Republican ticket. So he's asking for your support on the Republican ticket. And remember, if you're an independent, you can vote Republican in the upcoming primary on Election Day. Let's get into some of the topics of Ron Paul, because he talks about some big things that we want to hear right now. We want to hear how we're going to balance the budget. He says he could do it in about 3 years. He's going to cut spending. He's going to cut government waste. Maybe you can talk a little bit about those issues.
Yeah, those actually are some of the things that appealed to me, in addition to originally drawing me to him for the Federal Reserve. He's really the only candidate out there that's proposing real cuts, not cuts to projected increases in the budget, but real cuts. He's proposed cutting $1 trillion in the federal budget the first year. He wants to cut 5 cabinet departments because the federal government is taking its business and involving itself in things that it's not meant to be involved with. 5 of those departments he'd like to cut were HUD, Housing and Urban Development, the Interior, Commerce, Energy, and the Department of Education. I think it was before 1970, somewhere around there, there was no federal involvement in education. So younger people may have a hard time understanding no federal involvement in education, but people who were around, prior to it don't have a hard time accepting that concept.
Well, you're right. I mean, that brings us right back to that No Child Left Behind discussion that we just heard with Santorum. Cutting government waste, slashing congressional pay and perks. I can only imagine how much money is overinflated into the perks of being a congressman.
I'm sure it is. Well, a lot of people might not be aware of it, and Ron Paul doesn't like to toot his own horn, so to speak, but he's the only person in Congress right now that does not participate in the lucrative congressional pension program. Now, we know how bad pensions can be on the people who fund them, particularly here in Rhode Island and in the city. And, he's entitled to an $80,000 a year pension when he retires from Congress, and he has vowed to not take that pension and has voluntarily withdrawn from the plan altogether.
Interesting, and he puts not only that, but he puts his money where his mouth is, so to speak. We just heard a discussion on the Dion program regarding Obama and what he pays in taxes versus what his secretary pays in taxes and so forth. Ron Paul has said, elected president, he's going to take home a salary of $39,336, which is approximately equal to the American worker's median personal income.
Yeah, that's more like Larry would say, the real world. That's more in the sense of what the real world people have to live with.
There's many issues that we want to get to, but there's some bullets that, as I was looking through, are just really important that we want to put out there. Let's talk about Medicare for a second, because it's, as people try to figure out reasons why not to vote for Ron Paul, it's a matter of also having the proper information at hand. And this guy, Ron Paul, what you believe in is what you believe in. But when you look around, look at the Rhode Island Republican ballot. Ron Paul on the bottom, right underneath undecided, undeclared.
Well, that was done in the lottery. That's what they say, it's luck of the draw.
When you look at the graphics on some of the major news networks, and even though Ron Paul may have a bigger percentage in a particular state, he's still listed at the bottom.
Oh, he's completely overlooked. There's a media blackout on most of the news relating to him currently. I'm sure most people are not aware that he just recently swept all the delegates out of the St. Charles caucus that was delayed over in Missouri. They talk about, Mr. Santorum winning the percentage of votes, but it's the delegates that count. And in these caucuses, Ron Paul excels, does exceptionally well, almost to the point where the chair people, who are the political GOP insiders, it might be strong words, but I believe they conspire together in order to try and shut out the Ron Paul vote because they're afraid of business as usual coming to an end and the apple cart getting tipped over.
And with that comes misinformation, like people saying, Ron Paul, he doesn't accept Medicare from his patients.
Right, that's right. Dr. Paul never accepted Medicare from his patients, and he does not on the principle that government shouldn't be involved with health care. Instead, he'd either work out a payment plan or treat him for free.
Yeah, treat him for free so the taxpayers aren't forking the bill. So when you hear Ron Paul as a doctor doesn't accept Medicare, what they don't say, he'll treat the patient. He doesn't deny treatment. He'll treat the patient for free.
Exactly.
He'll be paid for in order to keep the government spending down. And I don't know how many other doctors do that.
I don't think too many of them do.
Treat him for free.
He doesn't believe in the whole principle of government subsidized anything if it's dished out to a private individual or whether it's dished out to, what do they call it? They call it a crony capitalism. So when you have these private industries that get involved with government and receive special benefits from it, and those are the types of things that Ron Paul brings to light and is strictly opposed to. Now, that's not to say he's opposed to capitalism in general, because if, let's say, I offered a good product to the market and the market rewarded me by purchasing that product, then I should be able to, reap the benefits of that and not be punished. But if I had some type of special inside deal with the government or a special loan that benefited me and not other people, that needs to come to an end.
He also has been criticized, again, and I guess it matters on information, on foreign policy and things such as war. I know we have a clip on this next piece, but he's certainly not completely opposed to going to war. He just wants to make sure we're going to a war, not an undeclared war.
That's right.
Let's listen into this audio piece by Ron Paul.
Well, if we're threatened, if our national security is threatened, somebody brought up the subject, and we don't know the details of what he was describing, but he said to me, he says, what if there was a major military operation by some foreign operation that was going to close down the Panama Canal? What would you do? And, of course, the temptation now for most candidates and presidents is, I'd be there in a minute and I'd blow them all up. I said I would get the information, I'd study it, I'd take it to the Congress, and if they thought that it was indeed a threat and an attack which would lead to a direct attack on America and our national security was threatened, I'd ask him for a declaration of war. But then it would be all out. I mean, I would know exactly who the war has been declared against and fight the war, win it, and get it over with, but it would be much more precise. Now we go to war, Korea and Vietnam, and now in Afghanistan. It's nebulous. We don't even know who the enemy is. In Pakistan, we bomb the people and we give money to their government. It's a schizophrenic foreign policy. Makes no sense. So we antagonize the people at the same time we're subsidizing their government. But if our national security is threatened, the evidence is presented to the Congress, and they say we go to war, then that's when we do it.
All right. So, I mean, that clears up. He'll do what he has to do.
I would certainly hope that should clear it up. That was pretty clear and concise, I believe.
After Congress declares war.
Exactly.
Yep.
And the whole lead up to that was, under what circumstances would you go to war? That was the question that he was asked, because a lot of people like to paint it as, they don't use the word pacifist. They like using the word, he's an isolationist, mm-hmm. That's not true. There's a big difference between isolationism and non-interventionism. See, non-interventionism is you only go to war when you have to. The foreign policy that we've been pursuing over the last couple of, terms with presidents is preemption. There's a big difference between going to war preemptively and going to war to defend yourself, your principles, and your country. You know, if you were to ask, I see this thing, what would Jesus do? You know, would Jesus vote for the guy that says, let's go get him and kill him? Or would Jesus vote for the guy that says, I think we should apply the golden rule, you know, do unto others as they would do unto us?
The fact that he is the only candidate running for president that has served in the armed forces is undisputable.
That's true.
And Ron Paul spoke towards one of his other opponents, but all of his opponents, really. And with his foreign policy, as you just heard him state, he also feels that you got to have military experience to command the military. And I know personally, as I had a discussion with somebody the other day, it's a big thing. I want a military man being the commander-in-chief of the military. That's just me, somebody who's been there.
You know, when you have to make those decisions to send people off to war and die, you can't take those decisions very lightly. And that's where I think maybe somebody who has military experience would be more thoughtful in their process before they quickly jumped off to just send the guns out and get them.
Well, let's listen into this piece of audio as he explains this situation.
Yeah, I think people who don't serve when they could and they get 3 or 4 or even 5 deferments aren't they have no right to send our kids off to war and not be even against the wars that we have. I'm trying to stop the wars, but at least, you know, I went when they called me up. But, you know, the veterans problem is a big one. We have hundreds of thousands coming back from these wars that were undeclared, they were unnecessary, they haven't been won, they're unwinnable. We have hundreds of thousands looking for care. And we have an epidemic of suicide coming back. And so many have, I mean, if you add up all the contractors and all the wars going on in Afghanistan and in Iraq, we've lost 8,500 Americans and severe injuries over 40,000. And these are undeclared wars. So Constitution has rules. And I don't like it when we send our kids off to fight these wars and when those individuals didn't go themselves and then come up and when they're asked, they say, oh, I don't think one person could have made a difference. I have a pet peeve that annoys me to a great deal because when I see these young men coming back, my heart weeps for them. I need one quick follow-up. When I was drafting, I was married and had 2 kids, and I went.
That simple. And he was a flight surgeon from 63 to 68, I believe, with the Air National Guard and the U.S. Air Force. I think it was 2 or 3 years in each branch. Just to make it clear, in order to be a flight surgeon, you have to log so many hours of flight time. So each year you're in, you have to log X amount of time in the air to be a flight surgeon. So that just answers any question of did he ever leave the ground.
You know, I think that soundbite right there shows that Ron Paul truly believes and supports the troops. And I think the troops truly believe and support him and his message because the top 3 campaign contributors to Ron Paul's campaign are the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. He receives more contributions from active duty service people than all of the other candidates combined, and that includes the president as well.
Yep. Hit that real quick. You have another point you wanted to hit on monetary, and we are running out of time here quickly. Oh, we're all set. Okay. Robert Marquis, as it appears on the ballot, is asking for your vote for a delegate in the upcoming April 24th primary election. Don't forget to get out and support Ron Paul. He'll be in town Wednesday, April 18th, starting at 7 p.m. Get there early, around 6 p.m. if you do have tickets. This is going to be at the University of Rhode Island, the Keeney Gymnasium. This is going to be a free event, and the doors open to the general public at 6:30. Robert, thank you for your time today.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on today, Jeff, and I encourage everybody to go out and vote on April 24th.
The preceding program has been paid for by Robert Marquis, an independent Ron Paul supporter.